Hi, Brent Hull with The Build Show. Today, we're going to give a mini book review, but also explain and tell you about how to tell the future, right? How being a student of the past can let you know what's going to happen in the future. So today, the book I'm going to talk about is Selling the Dwelling, okay? And so this is a book, it goes back and chronicles from the early 1700s, the Gothic style, and all these different house books that were used to encourage builders, encourage homeowners, and everything else on what to build. Okay, there you get into Colonial Architecture, these building age magazines. This is a beautiful book, okay? So if nothing else, it's a really fun book to look at the pictures and kind of to study, but the information's really good as well. The part about telling the future is that I was explaining this to my daughter the other day, and she said, you ought to put that on video. So here we are. Basically, in the 1890s, or even earlier, 1870s, 1880s, after the Industrial Revolution, okay? After the Civil War. So the Industrial Revolution is 1820s, Civil War is 1860s. Coming out of the Civil War, all the advances of the Industrial Revolution hit home building. It changes the way we build houses. And so the Victorian style is the Second Empire, the Queen Anne's, the Italianate, the Carpenter Gothics, all those different style houses that are part of the Victorian period are because we could, okay? Because builders now had the ability to do things they'd never been able to do before. There's an explosion of woodwork in these houses. Why? Well, because now they have machines that allow us to turn moldings and cut things faster. The idea of having oak moldings or maple moldings in a house was unheard of pre-Industrial Revolution, right? Because no one had time to plane an oak molding, okay, by hand. Now, with power planers and power machines, you definitely have the ability. And so these houses just explode with woodwork, explode with ornamentation, and it was all about we can, right? Well, that lasts until the 1890s, 1900s, and then there's a rejection of that, okay? And what comes next? The arts and crafts era, which is all about the return and the revival of the arts and the crafts because the machine had stolen our soul, right? We had lost our ability to craft and design and do things because machine was everything. Now, I'm going to show you a couple books and examples of that, but here is you can't read this, it says the Model Suburban Architecture, okay? Oh, there it is. And in this book, okay, it shows doors, it shows more doors, house styles, right? These are Victorian houses. That's an Italianate style house. There's a Second Empire style house. But the ornamentation and the detail that takes place on these houses is only available and only happens because of the machinery, because of the Industrial Revolution. So you have this incredible advancement of design style. And then what comes next is the arts and crafts. This is a Gustav Stickley book where he's talking about what houses should look like, what furniture should look like, what design should look like. It's very simple and clean. And so the idea between these two is remarkable. Now, here's a 1890s book. This is an 1890s millwork catalog, okay? Now notice the crazy ornamentation of the brackets. In fact, there are about 6 pages of brackets here that are all, crazy ornamented. All this carving, all this fretwork, all this detail, again, is available because we can, right? Now, fast forward to the 1920s, the late 20s, there is 1 page or 2 pages on brackets, right? And so there is a rejection of that, okay? There is a rejection of that heavy ornamentation. Now, why do I tell you that? Well, because it's very similar to where we are today, okay? Think about it. 1980, the word McMansion was coined, okay? And so in the 1890s, 1880s, you had the Industrial Revolution. In the 1980s, you have the technological revolution, right? Remember dot-com millionaires, just this rise of this newfound wealth, very similar to the Victorian era. And our architecture was the same. The idea of that McMansion, of this gaudy, over the top, look what I can afford, look what I can do. The materials in these houses were newfangled, right? You have these composite materials, these fake materials that are a part of that cheaper building kind of construction, right? What's happened from the 1980s, we've rejected that McMansion style. And what's come in its place? Either the simple modern style houses, right, with no, very clean, no ornamentation whatsoever, okay, or this cottage style, right? Cottage style in the arts and crafts revival, okay, is all a part of this way we're building today, okay? So history repeats itself, right? And if you look back and understand these housing styles and everything else, you realize how these things come back. So be a student of history, right? Look at this great book. It's called Selling the Dwellings. It's all about kind of the marketing and the design of how houses happened, right, in every different period in American architecture. And when you learn to recognize these things, you learn to recognize what's happening, right, you can look back and then look forward and kind of know what's coming next, right? So what's coming next, right? Well, if you look at from the arts and crafts period and forward, it was a return of a revival style, right? The colonial revival and things like that. So I think we're going to see some of those revival styles happen again. I think we're going to see a colonial revival, Greek revival, French and English styles, which is already happening, right? And so then that was followed by modernism. So there's going to be a blend of all those things that are happening that are coming forward, but be a student and you'll begin to recognize these things. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.